Welcome to Talkin' Mets with Rob. Subscribe to the channel for all your New York Mets in-game live, pre-game, post-game, roundtable podcast, and all the breaking news for our New York Mets. Enjoy the show and let's go Mets.
What's up, Mets fans? Welcome back to another Mets spring training report right here on the channel. Hopefully everybody is enjoying their almost end of the week, as this is the last week before there's actually baseball almost every single day, and we can't wait for that as spring training officially starts in a few days, and we all can't wait for that. We need baseball back in our lives. Since I moved down south, I've had more snow here than I had in New York. So I'm dealing with snow, and I'm in the state of North Carolina. So there you go. And that's what is going on right now in North Carolina. Like, it literally snowed again. More snow than I've seen in a year in New York last year. So good news is that baseball is going to warm up things just a little bit as we get closer to the first game of spring training. And look, there's so much that we have to go over. There's so many things going on in spring training. With the Frankie Montas injury, there's more question marks when it comes to the rotation, and that's where we're going to start today. As we all know, that Jose Quintana has had interest in coming back for the entire offseason, and I think he made that very well known to the New York Mets. But the Mets went on a different route, right? They went through a different route. They went through Frankie Montas very early in the offseason, and we all believed that Jose Quintana or Frankie Montas was the replacement for Jose Quintana when they signed him early on in the offseason, and then they signed Clay Holmes. And when Minaya also came back, there was kind of not much room for Jose Quintana, even with a six-man rotation. And I think they should have just brought back Jose Quintana anyway, even if it was one of the back end of the rotation guys. But it is what it is at this point. The Mets now have interest in Jose Quintana because of the Frankie Montas injury, and they need stability somewhere in the back end of the rotation. There is way too many question marks, in my opinion, to not have a guy like Jose Quintana. Look, he's not going to strike out the world. He puts a ton of men on base, but if you look at his numbers, he's one of the better pitchers straining runners in baseball last year. He puts on a lot of runners, right? He doesn't walk a ton of people, but you know what? They get their base hits. They get on base. But in a miraculous way, even with this not great stuff, he finds a way to strand those runners. And this is a guy that, works as hard as he can on the mound. He's a guy that's not great. He's a guy that will give you 5 innings, but you know what? Occasionally he'll throw a gem. And that's what Jose Quintana is. You saw how important he was in late in last season and in the playoffs, and that's the type of guy I still think you need. Frankie Montas was always a question mark to me, even though I didn't think it was a terrible signing when it happened, so I'm not going to backtrack on that. But when it comes to Frankie Montas, he's been injury prone the last couple of seasons, and that has been a big problem. And when you give a multi-year deal to 3 pitchers in the offseason in Minaya, Holmes, and Montas, that was the one that I questioned the most. I understand, look, the Minaya one was a no-brainer, but the Clay Holmes one was, I understand the logic. I understand the philosophy that, you see the Michael Kings of the world, the Seth Lugers of the world go from the bullpen to a starting pitcher and look very good and have been key guys in the rotation for their respective teams. We don't know with the back end of the rotation. After it goes from Minaya, Senga, Peterson, even that top 3 has some question marks, in my opinion. The back 3 scares the hell out of me. And even if you do, and this is why with Jose Quintana, and I saw with Andy Marquino. Yeah, Joel, I find they said they're not pursuing starting pitching. I find that hard to believe, to be quite honest with you. I think they're trying to just, do this rather quickly when it comes to Jose Quintana, because of the fact that even if you want to, look, I understand the Mets are talking about depth, right? They say they have depth, but depth doesn't mean good. Depth doesn't mean quality. Depth just means quantity. And this is the problem that I have with the rotation, for the majority of the offseason, especially when we realize when all the signings were basically done and they didn't seem like they were going to make a trade for a starting pitcher, a lot of the choices, even with no injuries, wasn't very exciting to me. And then all you need is one more injury. And me and Chris talked about it during the roster prediction show. If there's one more injury, the Mets are in real trouble. Right now, they're kind of straddling the line right now. And I'm not saying that you need a 6, 7, 8 starter that needs to be great. But when you're going into a season with 6-man rotation, you are praying and you're hoping for health. You didn't even get to game 1 of spring training, and one of your middle to back end of the rotation guys is already injured and probably won't be back until midseason. So that is the issue that I've concerned myself with this the whole time. This is why when you see teams that say, "Oh, I don't like giving starting pitching long-term deals because of the possibility of injuries," yet you're giving guys that are given 2-year deals and even 1-year deals to guys that have been injury prone in their career, and you act like it's going to change the fact that because we're not a long-term deal, that the injury is not going to affect you, and it affects you right now. I just feel like I'd rather give the top starting pitcher more years, especially if they haven't been injury prone, like a Corbin Burns. The guy has been a workhorse. And I'm not saying when he's 37 years old, he's not going to have an injury, but the guy was 31, 32? Like, that's what I just don't understand. And what you leave yourself here for, especially with the 6-man rotation, and why I don't like it. If it's been so successful, why haven't teams that have been winning the World Series, that have been going on playoff runs, do it more often? Look at the playoff teams. How many playoff teams are going 6-man rotations? Right? I'm not talking about, getting an extra pitcher for a month because you have certain days off and you just use an extra guy just to give guys extra rest. They're doing it for one specific guy. And even before they put that into effect, Frankie Montas gets hurt. So it just the philosophy does not make sense. It's not a successful philosophy. I'm sorry to say, right? You're putting your whole philosophy of a 6-man rotation. And again, because David Stearns talks about a 6-man rotation and how he think it can work when it comes to innings, health, and blah, 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 and all that stuff, why didn't he do it with the Milwaukee Brewers when he was very handcuffed when it comes to spending money at all on the team, but specifically in the rotation? You know why? Because he had a Corbin Burns, because he had a Woodruff. And later on in his tenure, he had Peralta. So he always had an ace. So he didn't have to worry about your number one guy. And that helps a lot. And I'm not saying you got to give 10 years, $350 million or $300 million for a pitcher. But, I mean, I know Max Fried was overpaid. I know Corbin Burns. All these pitchers are overpaid. But short-term deals are overpaid as well, right? Frankie Montas got 2 years, $34 million? That's an overpay for a guy that hasn't been good since 2021, 2022, and he's been injured since then. That's a problem. Like, I just don't understand the fact that the way they're going about it is a successful philosophy. Because when a guy gets hurt, like Frankie Montas is now, you're going already into your 7th, 8th starters, maybe even 9th starter depth already, and it's February 20th. Because right now, if you don't make no moves, Griffin Cannon and Tyler McGill are going to be 2 out of your 6 starters. How is that going to be a successful philosophy? It's not. It's just crazy to me. All right, guys, so let me just go to the comments really quick. I saw somebody Stan says, threw a shout out. Rob, LA, Los Angeles threw a shutout in the playoffs and used 8 pitches. Yeah, I understand that. But they still weren't going to a 6-man rotation. They had basically 4/5 of their rotation injured. I'm not talking about injuries when they were going with a 5-man rotation, right? They were going through a 5-man rotation. You can't help 3 or 4 injuries in your rotation, right? That was the reason why they did it. There was no choice. The Mets had choices. A lot of the times the Dodgers went, and by the way, when they got to the deadline, what did they do? They got Tyler Glasnow. They got Jack Flaherty. So when they needed starters, they got them. And oh, by the way, who pitched well in the World Series? Who pitched well in the playoffs? It ended up being Jack Flaherty, Yamamoto, Buehler for that matter, right? And Tyler Glasnow did get hurt, but they did get him, right? But Jack Flaherty, Buehler, Yamamoto, all these guys, they got, right? These are top of the rotation starters. They got them, right? The Mets had a choice. This isn't a situation where the Mets had a ton of injuries and they had to scramble to find pitchers here. They chose to get Frankie Montas. They chose to get Clay Holmes. They chose to not go after the top starting pitching on the market and go to that tier B, tier C level pitchers. That's why I'm upset, because it does not make sense. Like, nobody can be confident in a rotation that has Frankie Montas that hasn't been healthy for a full season since 2022. And when he's pitched, he has not been good. Clay Holmes, we have no idea. Just because he looks good in spring training and he's striking out guys that hasn't swung a bat in 6 months in spring training right now, doesn't mean he's going to be good. The guy has not pitched more than 90 innings in his career, probably since the first year when he was with Pittsburgh. I don't even think he pitched that many innings. So we just assume Clay Holmes, and even if Clay Holmes is great, how do we know we can throw 150 innings without breaking down? And then late August into September, he's struggling because he has no gas left in the tank. And now these are the guys that we have to go to war with in the playoffs. It's not a good philosophy. It really isn't. If it's so successful, the teams that have been winning World Series, and just go back the last 5 years, who's had a 6-man rotation and been successful? And they haven't even implemented that, right? Go back to 2020. I know that's a weird year, but they were still going 5-man rotations. Dodgers, right? Then it was the Braves. Like, we forget, right? It's crazy to me, but this is how it goes. And we have to understand that this is not the best way to go about it. It isn't. It really is not. They're trying too hard here, in my opinion. I think they're trying to outsmart everybody when it's not that hard to figure out. It really isn't. Like, they are lucky that Sean Manaea took less money and probably less years to come back to the New York Mets, because he probably had a 4-year deal on the table for more money. They got lucky in that situation. But I still believe that Sean Manaea is not an ace. 1 year doesn't make me, just say, oh, he is an ace. I just don't feel that. All right, let's keep on going. All right. Yeah, guys, I understand we could say that the game has changed when it comes to that, and starting pitching hasn't been, quote unquote, as important, but it's not just about innings. It's also about guys that can actually do the job when it counts the most. And I'm sorry, there is not, even if I have somewhat confidence in Sean Manaea being very good, there's nobody else that has been consistent enough throughout their career and say that you're confident in any one of these guys after Manaea. Kodai Senga, yeah, he looks good in the bullpen and he looks healthy. That's a great sign. But again, he didn't pitch all season last year for 6-7 innings, right? Now we need him to throw 150 at the least. And then you go to David Peterson, who's coming off hip surgery and throwing the most amount of innings in his career. And we expect him to at least replicate the innings and also stay healthy. And, oh, by the way, pitch well, because he's one of your top 3 starters. And then 4, 5, 6, I mean, it could be more of a crapshoot. Tyler McGill, we nobody wants him in a rotation. He's going to be a number 4 or 5 starter. Like, that's a fact. And he hasn't shown very much health either when you throw him in the rotation. Griffin Cannon had injury concerns and also has not been good. And these are 2 guys that are going to be 4th, 5th, or 6th in your rotation. How does that be successful? I just don't understand it, because all you're doing is going to the bullpen a hell of a lot more early on in the season, if not as much as possible, because you don't trust those guys. The reason why teams go to the bullpen so often, most of the time, And if you look at it, just look at the numbers and look at who's pitching. It's the guys that are not very good, right? They're not taking Corbin Burnes out in the 5th inning because, we got to protect his innings, or Max Fried for that matter. You know what? At least they're going 6 innings. They're using their bullpen because they don't trust the starting pitchers that are not very good to go past the 5th inning because they don't like that third time in the lineup stuff. So they're not very good. So they go to the bullpen. So the bullpen that should be very good is going to get very taxed in the first half just based on circumstance, right? Sean Manaea hasn't pitched that many innings in 5 years? 4 or 5 years? Nobody else Kodai Senga didn't pitch last year, so who knows how many innings he can throw. Same thing with David Peterson, the most in his career last year. And then 4, 5, 6, it's a big, flip of a coin. And you just with a 6-man rotation, and who knows if that's going to help, because right now we're already going to our 6th and 7th, our 7th and 8th starter to fill a rotation. So it's crazy that this is the situation. But when you have a guy at the top of the rotation that every 5th day is going to give you innings, is going to pitch well, you're not going to have to worry about him, right? You don't have to worry about, all right, should I worry about his pitch count, his innings? No. You don't not trying to get a guy to go to 120, 125 pitches, but a guy that can give you a solid 6 innings almost every time out. Sometimes go 7th or 8th innings, right? Can Sean Manaea do that? Sure, but we're just assuming he's replicating 1 year over the last 4 years. That's what we're hoping for. And oh, by the way, he changes his mechanics completely around, and that changes your body as well. You have to, position your body in a different way on the mound, just like he was doing. Who knows if he's going to stay healthy? Again, the Mets are 1 injury away from this being already a disaster. And I know you don't want to bring injuries into existence, but it happened already, and the guy didn't even throw a pitch. Like, it's crazy to me. It really does not make sense. But the Mets and Jose Quintana, we'll see if there's a reunion. I think honestly, you got to bring him in. You got to bring in a veteran in here that can throw you innings. He's nothing special. He'll probably be around what Manaea probably could have. Montas could have been, maybe even a little bit better. But you know what you're getting from Jose Quintana. We had no idea what we were getting from Frankie Montas. And what we do know, and this is the other thing that annoys me, especially with the rotation when it comes to Stearns, is that the fact that Stearns talks about long-term deals and injuries with pitchers that they haven't been mostly successful, but you're giving a 2-year deal to a guy that has been injured over the last 2.5 seasons, and it's like okay because it's only a short-term deal, when it's not okay because most of the first year he's probably going to be out with an injury. It's just I don't like the philosophy. Yes, I understand the beefed up bullpen and everything like that. But again, you're going to tax your bullpen because of the lack of rotation that you have, the lack of guys that can probably go more than 5 innings. Because again, who are you confident in going more than 5 innings? Maybe Sean Manaea, maybe. They're not going to do it for Senga, at least for the first couple of months. We know they're going to protect Clay Holmes. And I know they said that they're not really an innings limit on Clay Holmes. There is no way they can't be an innings limit, at least early on, for Clay Holmes. The guy has not pitched more than 90 innings in his career. And then you look at everybody else. Who knows with David Peterson? We just don't know. You're trusting David Peterson to be a number 3 starter. And again, we saw this last year. What happened when the rotation couldn't handle it? And you had to go to your bullpen more and more. And regardless of who the names are, you're using them more. And we saw what happened with our best bullpen arms. When you use them more early on, they're going to run out of gas later in the season. And I think that's what looks like the path. And I just don't get the philosophy. Like, I'm not saying you need 2 or 3. I'm not saying you need 2 $40 million pitchers. But I'm sorry. You could have brought back Sean Manaea. You could have got a Corbin Burnes. And you still have David Peterson. You still have Kodai Senga. That's already 4 guys, right? If your 4 guys is Burnes, Manaea, Peterson, or Kodai Senga and Peterson, your 5 or 6 starter, you know what? It could be Griffin Cannon and Tyler McGill, but you're counting on Tyler McGill and Griffin Cannon because of the fact the lack of trust that you have in anybody else. Frankie Montas is not going to excite anybody, regardless of if he was healthy or not. Like, I don't know. The 6-man rotation involves a lot of health. And if the health is not there, which is already starting out to be not looking good so far, you're going into your depth already, right? You know who your depth is now when Tyler McGill and Griffin Cannon are now in your rotation? It's the Max Kranix, right? I don't think Brandon Sproat's going to be ready yet, right? Blade Tillwell's not ready yet. Hamill's not yet ready yet. Like, this is what you're going into those pool here. And even if you bring up a Brandon Sproat or a Blade Tillwell, let's say one of those guys show over the first month, wow, these guys look good, they look ready. You bring them up, they're going to be on an innings limit. So what is the point? That is what I just don't understand. This is what annoys me about the philosophy that the David Stearns and a lot of other teams as well. But I still see the same teams that might have a philosophy, because at the end of the day, if the 6-man rotation was so successful, more teams would be doing it. I don't want to hear, oh, the Mets are ahead of the curve and, they're going to show how big the philosophy was. You know what would have been a good time to do a 6-man rotation? Last year when you were in evaluation mode, not this year when you're trying to win. It just doesn't make sense. All right, let's go. Keeping on looking. All right, here we go. Easy. No, I don't want Stearns gone. But let's not act like David Stearns is a genius here for putting this rotation together, because I'm sorry, me and you could have put this rotation together. That's not hard to do. Sean Manaea was an easy back. It's not like they worked hard to get Sean Manaea back. Sean Manaea wanted to come back. He took less money to come back to the Mets. Clay Holmes, the reason why he came to the Mets was because the Mets were probably the only ones that offered him, hey, listen, we'll give you a chance to be a starter. Everybody else probably were giving him money to be a reliever. Right? Frankie Montas, they signed him so early that if you really look at it, it's actually an overpay for an average pitcher. They try to get ahead of the market, and if you look at it, there was guys like Walker Buehler that got a few $1 million more. That we all know that Buehler's better than Montas. Like, it's interesting. Can it work? Sure, it can. But the biggest question mark when you have a lineup the way people are talking about it, that it could be top 3 in the league, your bullpen can be top 5 in the league, and then you have a subpar rotation, just doesn't make sense. I'm sorry. The teams that make the playoffs every year always have a top guy. Always even have, a solid number 2. I'm sorry. Can Manaea and Kodai Senga be that? Absolutely. But you are counting on Manaea doing close to what he did last year and staying healthy. And then hopefully Kodai Senga stays healthy, because I think if he stays healthy, he can be good. I'm not saying great, but we just assume he's going to be great or be very good. It's very concerning, in my opinion, because what people are going to complain about early on, because baseball fans always do it. Why are you taking him out in the 5th inning? He has a 1-hitter. He's looking great. And then you put the bullpen in for 4 more innings, and let's say if the bullpen blows it, well, you should have never took out the starter. And if the bullpen does well, great. So you had to use 4 guys just to get a game in, and win or lose, you're still using 4 guys. And then tomorrow is going to be the same thing, and the next day, and the next day. Because I can assure you right now, the first month of the season, maybe even 2, they're going to be very careful with a lot of guys in it. And I'm not saying it's the worst thing in the world, but when you're trying to not have a situation like you had last year, a terrible April and most of May, you can't afford that, right? Will they push the starters if they're pitching well an extra inning? I don't think they will. Maybe Sean Manaea, but everybody else, I have no idea. And I don't see how you can have any confidence in doing that. Madeline, yeah, I think Stearns is obsessed with the 6-man rotation, but I don't think necessarily Stearns believes it's a successful philosophy. I think he knows, because, again, just go by the numbers in 2023. Kodai Senga pitched, 3 times on 5 days rest? his ERA is over 5. And when he had a 5th day of rest and pitched every 6th or 7th day, that's when he had an under 3 ERA. So the Mets are hoping Kodai Senga can, 1, stay healthy, 2, pitch the way he did in 2023 with the 6-man rotation. And again, I keep on going back to this. Just because you go to a 6-man rotation, why do we just assume that it's going to help everybody else in this rotation? When most of these guys have pitched every 5th day most of their career, and that goes for Sean Manaea, David Peterson, Tyler McGill for that matter, and even Griffin Cannon. These guys weren't on 6-man rotations, so why do we just assume it's going to help them? Why wouldn't it hurt them? Extra days rest is always not, the perfect scenario of pitchers pitching well. So it's a different philosophy, but if it's that successful, why didn't he do it with the Brewers? I guarantee you he had a ton of depth in Milwaukee as well, with younger pitchers and everything like that. Again, why did he have a 5-man rotation in most of his time, if not all of his time in Milwaukee? Because he had top of the rotation starters. He had the Woodruff, he had the Burns, he had Peralta later in his tenure. When you have that, you don't need to go to a 6-man rotation. That's the problem. You go to a 6-man rotation because you have to, baby a guy like Kodai Senga just to stay healthy and pitch well. I don't like that philosophy, because you can help one to hurt another, or help one to hurt multiple, and there's no guarantee that he's going to pitch well and stay healthy. I think it's more, I don't think it's a philosophy of looking for quality in a 6-man rotation and getting the most out of them. I think it's a 6-man rotation and being obsessed with it, because this rotation is going to rely on Kodai Senga being good. Because if he's not, or if he gets hurt, what do? You're going to go to a 12-man rotation? Like, it's just silly to me. That's why the opener doesn't work very often. And I know the Dodgers, who didn't have a choice because of the injuries, and that just happened. They didn't have a choice. They couldn't go to the trade deadline in October and in September. So I don't know. I hope it's successful because I want them to win. But I think this is the one thing that we're going to be talking about, at least for the first half. And to not anything do that, it just doesn't make sense to me. Yeah, Anthony, I completely understand that. But again, you're doing it for one pitcher out of 5, out of the other 5. What happens if Sean Manaea doesn't like pitching every 6th day? What if it doesn't help him? What if it makes him too strong? We hear about this all the time when guys get an extra day's rest because of off days, because of rainouts, and they're too strong. They're throwing too hard. Their off-speed pitches are too close to their fastball, and there's not much movement, or they're throwing too hard. They're overthrowing. We hear that all the time. Again, so if Senga pitches great and Manaea struggles and a couple of other guys struggle, are we going to call a 6-man rotation a success because Kodai Senga pitched well? No, I wouldn't. I know some people will, but I feel like everything has to go right with a 6-man rotation. Number one, health. We already see that's already a strain on the depth already. So because you have to add an extra guy in a rotation when somebody gets hurt, and it's not going to be a very good, if good at all, guy in this rotation. And then you're hoping that more guys work out other than Senga with the extra rest. But there's no guarantee of that either. Because again, if it was so successful, why don't the top teams in the league do it more often? Because it's not a great concept. It really isn't. I don't see how it's a good concept. I really don't believe it. All right, let's keep on going, guys. D, don't worry. We'll get to Alonso. Montas going down is a blessing in disguise. Not when you have Tyler McGill and Griffin Cannon filling those spots. It's not. All right? I'd rather see Frankie Montas than Tyler McGill or Griffin Cannon. Sorry, I just would. Not that I'm excited about Montas, but if I had to choose who would be in his spot, I'd rather have Frankie Montas other than McGill or Griffin Cannon. Griffin Cannon never pitched well, and Tyler McGill had his moments, but everybody wanted him off this team. So yeah, I just don't understand. Yeah, D, they're not bringing up Sprout again. They're not doing that. That's the thing that you guys. And again, who cares if you bring up Sprout? Like, didn't we see this with Christian Scott when we were going through it in 2020? What was it? 24, whatever the hell it was, 23, right? Or 24, whatever the hell it was, right? Christian Scott, he was good. But guess what? They were taking him out in the 4th inning, occasionally the 5th inning, but it was not even about innings. It was about pitch count. So what do you think you're going to get from a Brandon Sprout? You're going to get a guy that's going to throw 4 innings at most, maybe 5 if the pitch count is good. But they're taking him out. Like, it's not a successful philosophy when you're going to try to lower these guys' innings and, he can't throw more than 60 pitches. Like, it's just stupid. It really is stupid. Like, if Brandon Sprout's going to be up here, throw him out there. But they're not going to do that. First off, Brandon Sprout's not ready yet. All right? He struggled a little bit with control in AAA and wasn't good when they moved him to AAA. He was really good in AA, but when he got to AAA, he struggled a little bit. So he might not be ready yet. So not only are you going to limit his innings and his pitch count, so no matter what the scenario is, he could be throwing a shutout in 5 innings, but because he has 65 pitches, he's coming out of the game. Like, they don't, like Christian Scott, I don't even think he threw 80 pitches in any of his starts. That's how much they protected him, yet he still got hurt. So if you're going to bring these guys up, I want these pitchers like Brandon Sprout come up and say, all right, we need you for 170 innings, 160, 170 innings. Because Brandon Sprout, you're bringing him up, you're expecting him to be a number 2 at worst. Because if he's anything less than that, well, you treated him like an untouchable prospect because he was supposed to be a top starter. So if you're going to have this guy come up, there can't be any restrictions. I'm not saying throw him 200 innings, but there can't be so many restrictions because all it does is hurt your team. It's going to hurt your bullpen, and it's going to hurt your chances of winning. Here we go. Let's keep it going. Catching up on the comments, guys. Give me a second. You're mid. You see, here's the thing. He wasn't a number 5 starter. He was actually a number 4 starter. Clay Holmes was a number 5 starter. The issue is, Montas, you're replacing him now with either McGill or Griffin Cannon. It doesn't matter because both of them right now are in the rotation. So that's not better. Like, it's not about Montas being good or not. It's just that what you're replacing him with is even worse. That's the issue. The only thing that you can look at is that these guys are a little bit younger, and you hope they show something, right? We know where Tyler McGill is, but Tyler McGill, even when he pitched well, he got injured. I don't think he had a season that he hasn't been injured. Griffin Cannon has not been good. He's a failed prospect, and he also had injury issues. So that's what you're working with here. It's not about Montas being good or not. It's the fact that you have to replace him with much worse. That's the issue. Yeah, Dwayne, you could say that all you want. But all I see every single year is the teams that are in the playoffs that win World Series always have that top line starter. Go back to the World Series last year. Who was pitching? Garrett Cole was pitching. Who was pitching? Yamamoto, Jack Flaherty. Walker Buehler was pitching the clincher. Like, who are you throwing out there besides Shomania? Like, stop it. Let's not act like that, right? Zach Wheeler is there, right? You have guys like Schwellenbach. You have guys like Strider. I know he got hurt, but Strider as well. Let's not act like the guys that are making the playoffs here that are, they have one starter, or they have guys that are probably not any type of ace, and they're constantly going to their bullpen, or they're constantly trying to figure out. Listen, when you don't have an ace is when the Mets did what they did last year. When Manaea was on regular rest in the playoffs, Manaea was going on regular rest. They decided to throw Kodai Senga. That's how you know you don't have an ace. When you have an ace, there's no doubt. When you have enough rest for a starter and it's your ace, there is no doubt who's pitching that game one. There was question of if Manaea was going in game one. Why? He had normal rest because again, the fact of the matter is you didn't have an ace. Manaea was damn good, but it wasn't an ace. A guy that was, you don't even have to think about it. When we go on pre-games and we're thinking who the hell's gonna pitch, or post games who's gonna pitch game one of a start of a series, and me and Chris are debating back and forth, Manaea or Kodai Senga, that's a problem. Like, that is a real problem. So we'll see. All right, guys. So let's move on to the next. Let's see. Hold on. Yeah, easy. Just about every pitcher goes 5. No, it doesn't. Find me a top of the rotation starter that goes 5 every single game, right? I'm sorry. It's just a terrible fact. Like, the fact is, the teams go to bullpen arms more, and I still believe that teams go to bullpens quicker because I think consciously it's a complete business decision because they don't want to pay these pitchers, starting pitchers, more money and more years. So I think this has been an analytical philosophy, the same way analytical philosophy when it comes to everything in baseball is to try to go to the business end of a situation. I truly believe that. Like, I truly believe that analytically, why do you think they use analytics on almost everything now? I think it's all about business decision. If it works out on the field, great. It's a win-win. I truly believe that. Let's see. Christopher, I've been saying that for a while. Walpole, you see, a 6-man rotation makes sense if you have Sasaki and Senga. That's why people bring it up. Oh, well, the Dodgers are probably going to go through a 6-man rotation. Yeah, but guess what? They got 3 Japanese pitchers. They got probably 3-4 aces in their rotation. So they can do that because they can limit those innings, but they still have the ace of a staff. Like, if the Mets got Sasaki, it made more sense to go to a 6-man rotation than it is for just Kodai Senga. If you have Sasaki, who has ace-like stuff, then okay, I get it. You got 2 Japanese pitchers. It's kind of hard to protect both of them in a 5-man rotation. But you're protecting one guy who, again, is he going to make or break the rotation? He possibly could. But there's no guarantee that you're going to help. If you help in 2/5 or 2/6 of your rotation, fine. But I just feel like you're doing it for one guy, and it's like there was the problem is there was options for the Mets. They chose not to get Burns. They chose not to get Buehler. They chose not to get Jack Flaherty or Max Fried. I'm sorry, right? The reason why the Mets were hovering around 90 wins or close to 89 wins was because they struggled with pitching for most of the year. Like, that was an issue. Because after Manaea started figuring it out, Luis Severino was fine, but he was never great. Like, like everybody else was like, oh my God, hopefully somebody pitches well other than Manaea. Like, that was an issue. The offense carried his team for the majority of the year, other than Manaea. All right, so let's go to Steve Cohen, what he said. And he said a lot, and I'm not going to go over everything. Steven, I'm going to try to do a couple of spring training games, but I will let you guys know about that for sure. All right, so I'm trying to catch up to all these comments. Great job, guys. I appreciate it. All right, here we go. So Steve Cohen talked a lot, right? He talked about the attendance. He's hoping that the attendance is going to be more again. Go back to successful seasons the year before, right? 2015, 2022, last year. In year 2016, in year 2023, there was more fans after a successful season. Why? Because people got excited. People were jumping for joy, right? 2015, they made the World Series. 2016, right, with this beautiful rotation that they had. Young rotation, right? Everybody got excited because you made the World Series the year before. So everybody bought tickets. Everybody went. I know I was at a lot of games in 2015, especially 2016. So I was always there. The place was 28, 30,000 almost every night, even during the weekdays. Like they hit 3 million fans that year. Same thing with 2023. After 2022, even though it was a disappointing season, they won 101 games. There was still a lot of excitement going into 2023. They hit 3 million fans that year. Like there's going to be more fans going to the game. Right? Go back to that Washington series prior to going to prior to Philadelphia coming to Citi Field. Steve Cohen talked about it. 18,000 fans a night. I know it was a weekday. It was like almost the end of the school year and all that. So we understand that. But the fact that people still weren't going to games. And don't give me, oh, it's expensive and blah, blah, blah. Because if it's so expensive and everything's hard to do and everybody's, oh, the parking sucks, the train sucks, the travel sucks. Why is there 40,000 fans, 40 plus, 45, 46, 48,000 fans every night at Yankee Stadium? Right? It's not about the money. It's not just about that. Right? Because if that's the case, last time I checked, the Yankees are in New York. Right? Their prices are higher. Their food prices are higher. I think the Mets' food choices are better at Citi Field, right? For probably a little less money than Yankee Stadium. Why is that? Right? I'm going to tell you now. And Ray just said it. If they win, they will come. Right? The reason why it took so long last year was because Steve Cohen himself, in the offseason, going into 2024 season, he says this is going to be an evaluation year. We're not going to spend a lot of money, right? It's a transition year. They said that. So why did you expect people, regardless of if they were going on a run or not, people are just going to show up? You didn't go spend money. You traded players to bring back prospects. You didn't get any high-priced free agents. You got the Sean Manayas, the Luis Severinos, which ended up turning out pretty well for them. But when it came down to it, it ultimately hurt you when you got to the playoffs because they went on a run. You didn't want to trade prospects to get better during the trade deadline. You didn't spend money in the offseason, and then ended up ultimately hurting you. Right? Parking at Yankee Stadium for a regular season game is between $60 and $80, maybe even $100 during a premium game. Dodger Stadium, Richard just said it, right? I know. I went there in 2021, right after COVID, when the Mets played over there. It was like $65. It was insane, right? But why do they sell out every night? Why do they? I'm not saying sellouts every night, but why can't you have 28 to 30,000 there every night when it's Mets Pirates? And you know what? You're going to see a jump in tickets, right? I think parking now is like $40 at Citi Field, right? That's not the Mets. Again, the parking lots in most stadiums are not owned by the team. They're owned by private property, private people, private individuals, right? That one time last year when Steve Cohen, when the prices dropped and it was half price, Steve Cohen took money out of his pocket to pay the private lot guy, the private investor that has the parking lot. He paid him out of his pocket so fans can pay less money for parking. Like he did that. Like there was a story in Forbes about that. He paid him a tremendous amount of money. I think it was for the 10-game homestand. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was August, if I'm not mistaken. And I think it was like a close. I think it was over. I know $1 million doesn't seem like a lot for Steve Cohen, but he did take it out of his own pocket to have the fans save money for that 10-game homestand. Like that's most of these stadiums, I think if not all, but I think most of them, right? The stadiums I've been to, they all have been owned by private lots, right? Colorado, the Rockies, right? They all have little parking areas around the stadium in Colorado, right? I mean, obviously when you go to states that are kind of cheaper, you're going to see cheaper parking, but it's still $35, $40 to park, $25, $30. It's less than Citi Field, less than Yankee Stadium. But again, you're in New York, you're in LA, right? I go to Pittsburgh. If you want to park there, it's not that easy to find parking there when you're in basically downtown Pittsburgh. But it's around $30. Like, it's not cheap, but it's not the teams. Right. But again, I don't want to hear, and I heard it on the radio. It's been a big topic of conversation ever since Steve Cohen talked about the fans not showing up. But the fans didn't show up because of the fact, and again, right, ticket prices are higher this year. But why is there going to be more fans in the ballpark? Last year they won. They got to the NLCS. You bring back, you signed Juan Soto, the biggest free agent on the market. You bring back fan favorite Pete Alonso, right? You had a successful season last year. Right? You revamped your bullpen. People are not going for your bullpen, but you do bring in Juan Soto. I'm sorry. Stars bring out fans, right? Pete Alonso is a big draw. Fans love him, right? But why was there 18,000 fans? Pete Alonso was in the ballpark. You know why? Because he isn't that draw that he once was 3 years ago, right? Met fans are not going to see Pete Alonso, right? But I guarantee you they're buying tickets because they signed Juan Soto. And the Mets were good last year. Easy, I agree. The Mets shouldn't be 18th in attendance. It was one of their worst draws in Citi Field history. And it hasn't been a long time Citi Field has been open, but it's a decent amount of time, a good, meter to look at. It was one of their worst attendance seasons in Citi Field history, right? Their best was the inaugural season in 2009 when they first opened the ballpark. There was a ton of people. The team wasn't very good, but people wanted to see the ballpark, right? There was the intrigue there. But go back to 2010, 11, 12, 13. 2014 was one of the worst Citi Field attendances in the Citi Field short history at that time, right? Even 2015 wasn't a great attendance. Obviously, it started to pick up in late July into August and September because they went on a run. But most of that year, the ballpark was empty. Right? And again, this is where, and thank you, Truman, for saying that. This is what always has been a problem in Flushing. Listen, why do Yankees, besides the winning, all right, the Yankees get a lot of casual fans to go to Yankee Stadium. A lot of casual fans that probably don't care if the Yankees win or lose. You know why? I'll tell you why. Because after the game or before the game, it's not a very nice area at Yankee Stadium. Have you been around there? 161st and River Avenue? Have you been around that area? It's not a good area, right? It's a very bad area, Yankee Stadium. But why do 42, 44, 45,000 people go almost every single night, even during the weekdays? You know why? Because there's actually something to do before and after game. You got Billy's, right? You got multiple bars. You got multiple restaurants. It's not a lot, but it's something. It's something that maybe 10 to 15,000 fans can go before and after the game. There is nothing to do before and after a game at Citi Field. So again, if you're a casual fan and you're not a big baseball fan, but you want to do something and there's nothing really to do, you don't want to go to the city, all right, let's just go to Citi Field, right? Yeah, the experience in Citi Field for 2.5 to 3 hours, maybe 4, is cool. But when you're only going, and this is the issue, when you're traveling car or by train, you're going there for the game. And I know that's kind of weird for us because we're going there for the game, most of us, the diehards, but it's the casual fans that make it 30,000, 40,000 a night, right? It's not always the diehards because, again, the diehards can make up 20 to 25,000 fans easily. It's when you hit that 30,000, 40,000 is mostly the casual fans that might care about baseball a little bit, might like the Mets a little bit, but are not going above and beyond and not going to 30 games a year or even 15 or 10. They might go to 2 or 3. Excuse me. The issue is there's nothing to do at Citi Field, outside of Citi Field. There's nothing. That's the issue. And Steve Cohen has brought that up, but that always has been an issue. Again, I know a lot of people that the best thing about Citi Field is that you can sit out in the parking lot and you can tailgate, right? That's been successful at Citi Field. But again, not everybody does it, People would like to just go to a bar or even go to a restaurant before a game, have a couple of beers for $5 instead of paying $15 at Inside City Field. People are going to go because of that. People go to Yankee Stadium not just because they have been winning, which has been a huge help, right? They've been consistently going to the playoffs. That helps. But it's also that you probably get between 5,000 and 10,000 fans that just randomly go to Yankee Stadium, and they don't go just because of the game. Just look, go to a game. You can tell who the casual fans are. They're the ones that are walking around the areas where you're just walking around. You see it at Citi Field. People are just, sitting at the tables, standing at the tables, drinking a beer, talking to their friends, right? It's an experience, but I guarantee you before the game or after the game, they're going to Billy's. They're going to a restaurant over there. Like, look at Atlanta. They have a whole area. Colorado, great party scene outside of Coors Field. Pittsburgh, one of the best. Ton of restaurants, ton of bars. Same thing in Colorado. LA, right? They don't have nothing around there. But what had drawn them there? Why do the Dodgers need to go above and beyond with stars? You know why? Because that's the only way to draw. Bring stars in and win. Right? The Mets have a unique experience where they have so much room to build, and they can have restaurants and bars there that eventually it probably will happen, but that has been a biggest problem. Because people always brought to me that, oh, well, look at the Dodgers. There's nothing over there except for mountains in Chavez Ravine. Yeah, I know. I drove through it. There's nothing there except for a couple of houses outside when you leave the Dodger Stadium parking area. But when you've signed a ton of stars and you got Otanis, the Yamamotos, the Mookie Betts, the Freddie Freemans, people want to see the stars. So, and you win, and you consistently go into the playoffs. That draws the fans when there's nothing else around there, right? And you can't tailgate in the Dodger Stadium parking lot. It's not allowed because too many crazy things happen. So that is the issue. So Cohen talked about that. The attendance is an issue. Probably won't be this year because of the intrigue last year. You get Juan Soto, so that's going to help. He also talked about the situation with the bid for the casino, which is going to hopefully bring a ton of restaurants, a ton of bars. That's going to help a lot. Correct, Truman. Exactly. Yeah, they do have a lot of stuff on Sunset. Yes, they do. So, but it's accessible to the stadium, right? That's like, it's not easy. It could be a pain in the ass, but there's something there. So I understand that. But again, around baseball, just go to almost every ballpark. Like Miami, there is really nothing there, but you got local spots that you can go to, but there ain't nothing around them all. But nobody goes anyway, so it doesn't matter. Miami, Washington. Have you been to DC? Right, the Nationals for a couple of years, they were pretty damn good, probably for about a 6-7 year period. Right, they did get a World Series, but again, there's things around there. Right, there's the Bullpen, which is an outdoor bar. There's a couple of restaurants around the area. There's things that you can walk into and eat something. Like, again, there's nothing around Citi Field. You have to walk about 2 miles just to get to a mall. You know what I'm saying, guys? So it's understandable. I get it. But there should be no reason. Like, I get early on, right? Like the Marlins series. Right, what was it? I think we played Toronto on the opener. I think we played the Marlins that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, right after the home opener series against the Blue Jays. That's going to be telling. It's a school week, early on in the week. It's early on in the season. Are they going to get 25? If you get 25 plus for those Monday, Tuesday, again, based on weather. Right? If it's possible, there's chance of rain and all that, you're going to see less people go. But if it's just a chilly night at Citi Field, there should still be 25,000 plus there at least. So I understand that. Like, I complained last year about Met fans not going to games when they were going on their run. Right? Even, I didn't go to any games at Citi Field last year because, again, I moved and it just hard because I changed work locations and it's not easy to get vacation when you just go to a new location. So it was hard, right? I was able to go to Chicago. I obviously went to a couple other road stadiums, but other than that, right? This year I'm going to Houston for opening day, right? It's hard to get to New York for me a couple times. Like I'm going next weekend to New York. But again, they're not playing yet, so it's kind of pointless. But I'm going to try to go. When you're out of state, I get that. But again, when people are not going to games and then they're going to tell me, "Oh, it's the prices," I'm sorry, it's not. Like sometimes it is. Yes, I understand. I'm not talking everybody's financial situation is different. But again, when the team across town is drawing 35, 40,000 every night, and their ticket prices are higher, their food prices are higher, their parking's higher, and it's a bitch if you're not from the city or the Bronx. If you're from, Queens, Brooklyn, Staten Island, or Jersey for that matter, it's not easy to get to the Bronx. It's a pain in the ass. So if you're a Yankees fan, right? There's more boroughs around Queens that you can just quickly get there, or somewhat get there easier, but it's still a pain in the ass. So again, you can go on the secondary market. I guarantee you, the Monday when we play the Marlins, you could probably get a ticket for like $6 on the secondary market. Go to TickPick, StubHub, whatever. You could probably find a ticket for $6, right? Even when I was a season ticket holder, at times I would sell my tickets because, let's say, I know I probably couldn't go, so I would sell my ticket on the secondary market. But something fell through, and I'm like, oh, I can go to the game now. I don't have my season ticket now, but guess what I could do? I can go in a secondary market. I was getting tickets for like $5, $6. Yeah, I like sitting. Look, I know a lot of people like to sit in the field level, everything like that. My favorite seats is the upper bowl, right? I like to sit behind home plate. It's a great view. You see everything. Again, if you're a casual fan, you probably like to sit low on the field level or better seats. Not me. Like every now and then I'll get a sweet ticket, and get, like go in the Clover area or something like that, or one of those areas where, it's basically free food and they're good seats. Sure, once in a blue moon, just to have the experience. But it's not because I wanted to have a better view of the game, because the best view of the game is behind home plate in the upper deck. If you really care about baseball, you like to see where the infielders are positioned, all the outfielders shifting, right? You get to see the whole game. You see everything going on. So if you're intrigued by that, like me and many of you are, I love those seats. I don't care for field level seats. I don't think you have a great view of the game. Like, it's cool to be closer, but to view the game as the way I want to see it, it's not very fun to me. Well, no, easy. You have the LIRR that goes to Citi Field as well, right? So you can, from Long Island, you can get there quickly. But I understand it's not easy. It's not. I understand that. But again, if you're at work, right, and you think you're gonna, like, you get out of work at 5:00. Say you work in the city, you're a Mets fan, right? You want to go to the game because you're a big Mets fan. Great, but think of the logic here. You know what? Wow, it's going to take me an hour to get to Citi Field from Manhattan. Let's say you leave 5, you get there at like 6:15, right? Yeah, you might want to get into the ballpark, but you know what? If you had something to do outside, let's say the casino was there, or a bar, or a couple of restaurants. Let's say there's a couple of restaurants and bars that you can go to. You might, go over there for the first 30 minutes before the game, 35, 40 minutes before the game starts. Have a beer or two, maybe get something to bite to eat. You're a little hungry after work. You can't do that at Citi Field. What you're going to do, you're going to get to the game at 6:15. You're hungry. You just got out of work, right? So you're going to spend $30 on food and a beer or just a drink. So there's $35, $40 right there, plus the ticket you already bought, right? So the concept of going to Citi Field isn't as intriguing because, yeah, you get to watch the game, but you got to travel. You're getting home from work. You're already in your work clothes. You feel kind of like, God, I wish I could take a shower right now. You probably have your Mets shirt in your bag, so you just turn that on your jersey, right? So there's a lot of obstacles. You're going through the whole day. The game's going to end like around 9:30. You got to take the train home, and it's already 10:30, 11 o'clock. You got to, shower, get dressed, get to bed, go back to work. Like, it's not as fun. It's just the game. And I know a lot of, like me, I can care less. Like, I used to go to games where I used to go to work. You guys know I work overnight. I work at midnight, 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. I was at the game. This is before the pitch clock. the game was, ended at 11:30. I'm going to work after the game. Like that's how I did it. I know everybody can't do that, so I'm not going to kill somebody for that. But when there's nothing else to do prior to the game, it's a huge issue. Like, I'm sorry, if I'm traveling from the city to try to get back home to Brooklyn or Queens, I don't feel like going to the game because I'm going to spend more money there where I can't go anywhere else. The only place to meet up with somebody is inside the stadium for the most part, unless they're tailgating, but not all the time you're tailgating. So it's like, it's crazy. Easy, yeah. I completely understand that. I remember doing the same thing. I didn't live in the Bronx, but I understand the logic. But again, you're going for the game. You can care less if there's something before you could do before or after the game because you're a huge Met fan, right? I mean, you've been on this channel forever, right? I know you're a huge Met fan. We disagree on a lot, but you're a huge Met fan. You go there for the game, so you're willing to do that after work and where you live, right? You're willing to do that because you want to go see the game for 2.5 to 3 hours, maybe even 3.5, right? So you're a diehard that I'm not talking about. I'm talking about the casual fan, the guy who's like, or the woman that goes, you know what? After work, I'm going to go to the game. But you know what? What am I going to do? I don't really care about the game that much. Yeah, I watch baseball every now and then, but I want to do something. You don't want to stay in the city or whatever because it's crazy and you want to catch your train by then or whatever. It's like, like you're going to the game, but you're already going to spend more money. And let's say if that person don't care about the money, but you're still spending $45, $50 if you want 2 or 3 beers and some food after work. Like, you're spending that, but you don't necessarily care about the game. So like, that's the casuals the Mets are trying to get, right? The Mets are not trying to get the diehards in. That's easy. Right? If you only care about the game before, and I've been going to game for years. There's nothing at Shea Stadium or Citi Field before or after. Like, I want to go to the game. Like, I love the experience before the game, walking around the stadium, looking at the light. If it's the day game, looking the sun shining on the grass, how beautiful the grass. Like that. That's what I love. Like the experience for me is the ballpark, is the game. I can care less before and after. I like the before and after stuff if it was there, but it's not a necessity for me. But for casual fans, again, I would love, it's very hard to do, but it's very hard to poll how many casuals go to Yankee Stadium on a daily basis. There's a lot. I'm telling you, there's at least 5,000 to 10,000 casual fans. Because if there wasn't casual fans going to Yankee Stadium, they would have 30,000 a night. They wouldn't have 40,000 a night. And 30,000 is still good, but they're not hitting 4 or 5 million people a year. But the casual fans go to a game not just because the Yankees are winning, it's because there's something to do before and after the game, where you don't have to spend $100 to $120 on food and beer inside the stadium. You can go to Billy's and get $5 beers, $6 beers, and save $10 per beer. And, get a couple of wings if you need them. Like, you could do that. There's restaurants there for $25. You can get a decent meal. Yeah, well, true, but again, that's what teams want, right? Do you think the Colorado Rockies draw much at all? Not much, but they get casual fans. Like, I've noticed that even in Pittsburgh, they don't draw a lot because the diehards don't like the team. So they're not going to spend their hard-earned money going. Who do you think goes to these Colorado Rocky games, the Pittsburgh Pirate games? The casuals, a lot of the casuals, because there's something to do pre and post. Like, that's the thing. Like, that's the bigger issue. And that's the Mets need to get that 5,000 to 10,000 casual fans, not every night, but most nights, especially on the weekdays. Especially in the summer. Like, you shouldn't have 18,000 fans in the middle of August when you're playing the Nationals in the middle of the week. I'm sorry. That's embarrassing, especially when the Mets were playing better. And I was bringing this up a lot last year. If you go back to the pre and post games, I go, guys, go to the games. Go. I'm not saying to spend $150 to go to a game. But again, the problem with a lot of these people is that they don't like sitting in the upper deck. They need to get field level seats that are going to cost you $75. Like, why? If you care about the Mets, go buy a ticket for $10. You sit in the first row of the upper deck. It's not a bad seat, right? You can walk down to the field level if you like the food down there. Like, it's not the end of the world. Easy, exactly, right? Look at the Rangers. Look at the Knicks. When the Knicks were terrible, you were getting, I know it's not 40,000 seats, but they were filling out the arena. Like, it's got to be something that you can treat. And yet, it's not about gambling. It's more about alcohol. It's more about people who drink. But again, you can have 2 bars, big bars outside of Citi Field. You can put them wherever you want. Put them on each corner of Citi Field, across the street. You would get a lot of people going. How many people that just live in the Flushing area that might not be baseball fans or might care a little bit? Hey, I'm from Queens. Let me root for the Mets, but I don't really care about the games. I don't care if they win 70 or 95. But you know what? They're like, hey, let's go do a couple of games. We live in the area. There's a bar right there. Let's, have a couple of drinks and go into the game. We'll leave after the 7th inning. But you get the ticket sale. You might even get them buying a little bit of food, maybe a drink. Like, that's what they're trying to get. You're trying to get the 5,000, 6,000, 7,000, close to 10,000 casual fans almost most nights. You're probably not going to get it early on in the season because it's still chilly, so cold. But when you get into the late May, middle of May, late May, and it gets warmer, that's when you want to get those casual fans. You want to get the Marlins game on the Monday where you might get 20,000. You're getting 28, 29, close to 30,000. Huge difference. That's what Steve Cohen is talking about. He talked slightly about Vladimir Guerrero Jr., how, having a lot of long-term deals is not sustainable because there's not a lot of roster flexibility. I'm sorry. You have 3 guys that have long-term deals on your team. Nobody else has long-term deals. Right? And he's talking about, why having young guys come up and perform well helps the situation because you don't got to pay long-term deals to have that spot filled. Like Mark Vientos, a revelation. The Mets could have been going after a third baseman this year if that was the possibility, if he didn't perform well and third base was a hole, right? But again, it's not Steve Cohen's fault, but we did have homegrown talents. 2 guys that, like in Alonso and Nimmo, unfortunately, when Steve Cohen took over the team, didn't have many years before he had to pay these guys of owning the team because they came up in 2018, 2019. So they were ready to come up on their contract year. So it's not Steve Cohen's fault, but it just circumstance, right? Nobody told you to trade for Lindor and give him a big extension, but you did it, right? You signed Juan Soto, right? You were the owner when you gave Brendan Nimmo an outrageously overpaid contract for a guy that wasn't going to play center field much longer. But you did it. That's why you're hoping Alvarez and Vientos and let's say Acuna at second base, because now you don't have to worry about paying those guys for 4, 5, 6 years. That's great. But you might have a first base hole after this year. Maybe Ryan Clifford might be your guy. But if you have 4 guys that have long-term deals, and most of these guys are stars, right? Lindor's a star. Vladimir Guerrero's a superstar. Juan Soto's a superstar. You could say Nimmo is, I would say, all-star caliber, but not superstar. But he's very good. If you have 4 guys on long-term deals, but your other 5 position players are short-term deals or young talent, like let's say the Mets do get Vladimir Guerrero Jr. next year, right? You got Lindor on a long-term deal, you got Soto on a long-term deal, Vlad on a long-term deal, and Lindor on a long-term deal. So right field, shortstop, first base, and left field. So center field, third base, catcher, and second base. And what am I missing here? And let's say DH. DH ain't going to be a long-term deal. It's going to be 1-year deal type of guys, maybe a young kid. So the other 5 spots are probably going to be guys you don't have to pay. Let's say Vientos works out and Alvarez works out. Those guys you don't have to, they're on cheap deals. Let's say Acuna is your second baseman after this year. You're not paying him for 5-6 years. Let's say Drew Gilbert or Ryan Clifford is one of your outfielders, your center fielder. Well, you're not paying them either. So all these guys are going to be cheap. Not only those guys next year, but you also are going to be having around 50 to almost $70 million, actually almost $80 million off the books next year with all these one-year deals and a couple other people. So you could still do that. You could do a Vladimir Guerrero sign, and like what flexibility? Like, why do you don't need flexibility when you have guys that are going to be mainstays in your lineup? I hate when they talk about roster flexibility, because roster flexibility should be for your bench guys, your role players, not guys that play every single day and are going to be the reason why you win or lose. Right? When you start talking about your role players, the bottom of the order, the utility guys, as things you're complaining about, it's because the main guys are not doing their job. I'm sorry. You can get Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and still have 5 guys you're not paying in your lineup alone. Like, that's a huge possibility. So let's keep going. So that was the Steve Cohen conversation. He said a lot more, but let's just go on. There's so much to talk about with Steve Cohen when it comes to that. The Alonso injury. Luckily, he avoided the injury, guys. If you haven't seen, Pete Alonso was taking grounders, and one ball took a bad hop and hit him in the eye. He is okay. He went back out into the field after he got treated for whatever he got treated for, and he is okay. Thank God. But again, if you play baseball, bad hops happen. I don't care how pristine the field is. You take a bad hop, it hits a rock, boom, hits you in the face. Like, I've had it happen. I guarantee you, if you play baseball, it happened to you. So luckily, he's okay. I was at work. I don't have great phone service at work, and I finally get some service, and I'm looking at X. I'm like, and I see Pete Alonso on the ground. I'm like, oh, here we go already. But he's okay. Thank God. He should be ready to go. He probably have a swollen eye for about a week or two, but he's okay. Thank God about that. Ken, how you doing? I'm just going to continue to look at the comments really quick, guys. Oh, yeah, Ethan, I agree with you. Again, I never said Pete Alonso ain't a tough son of a bitch. He is, right? He's played through injuries. The guy flipped over his car in spring training and was there a couple of days later. Like, the guy is tough. That's something I'm never going to take away from. Mentally, who knows, right? I think he's mentally a little soft, but hopefully last year he learned a lot, because that's what we're hoping for. So luckily Alonso avoided injury. He might have a black eye for a week or two after the ball took a bad hop and hit him in the face, but he is okay. Thank God it's not a major injury or he had anything major to his eye. So luckily Alonso is okay. Mendoza talks about the lineup, which he said the other day that he's really thinking about Lindor leading off and Soto batting second. Should it be breaking news, guys? This is what I've been saying for a while. Lindor had an MVP type season. You're not moving him out of the leadoff spot. That should be a guarantee, right? The only time you move him from the leadoff spot is when you're giving him a day off, and maybe that's not going to happen often, right? Juan Soto, bat second. He is the perfect number 2 hitter. He's a guy that takes a lot of pitches. He'll get his walks, but he also drive the ball over the wall. He is a run producer, but he is a perfect number 2 guy, because if Lindor gets on base, he is a guy who is a stolen base threat. Soto was what Nimmo was when it came to on base, when it comes to taking pitches. Juan Soto meticulously goes through an at-bat so well and works the pitcher. He's a perfect number 2 hitter. Not only can he drive the ball out of the ballpark, not only he is a run producer, but he's a guy who takes pitches. He'll work the at-bat. You'll see Juan Soto is great at having 6, 7, 9 pitch at-bats consistently. That's what he does, right? Every now and then, he'll jump on a pitch and hit one over the wall. but he is the perfect number 2 hitter. I am not shocked that Mendoza said that Juan Soto might be batting second, right? They're playing the first game of spring training. Lindor, Alonso, and Soto are playing. How much you want to bet? It's going to be Lindor 1, Soto 2, Alonso 3. And most likely Vientos batting 4th. But that's if he plays. You're going to see a lot of the young kids play at first, but they're playing the first game. Lindor, Soto, Alonso. That's what you're going to see, guys. I'd be shocked if he did it. So I'm not surprised at Mendoza. I know when Mendoza said it, there was a lot of people who were like, what are you doing? No, it makes more sense. It makes a lot of sense, at least at the beginning. I have no problem if it's not working out with Pete Alonso and Vientos and Nimmo 3, 4, 5. You might change it up a little bit. But start it off where I think this lineup can be most successful. You have Soto, you have Alonso in the middle of Soto and Vientos. I think that's the best place for him. Having him back cleanup makes no sense to me at all. Because all you're going to do is have Nimmo, who is solid, but isn't the best protector in the world for Pete Alonso. He's had that. Nimmo's been behind Pete Alonso before. It hasn't worked, right? All I heard Met fans say, Pete Alonso never has protection. So you're going to bat him behind Soto and Vientos with no protection. Put him in the middle of Vientos and Soto, and you're okay. And I think it'll be more successful that way. Stan, what do you think about trading for Devers? That's not happening. All right, it's not happening right now. When you have Vientos at third base, there's no point in bringing in a long-term deal, and you have to trade prospects for him. The Red Sox are going to be fine. I know Devers said, I'm playing third base. You're going to have Bregman, who could play second base. It's not a big deal. I'm not worried about that, and that's the least of my worries, right? I'm not worried about another bat in the lineup right now. If we were talking about a starting pitcher, we'll have that conversation. But Mendoza talked about Lindor, thinking about Lindor and Soto 1-2, which I've been saying for a while. I think that's going to be the case, at least in the beginning of the year. Yeah, Jay, I don't agree. Why should Pete Alonso say 4? Right? I heard Met fans say that he hasn't had protection. So you're going to bat him behind everybody that can protect him. Makes no sense. Sorry. Makes no sense. Right? Too many Met fans. Like I did a poll the other day. Where should Pete Alonso bat? I think 460 people voted. Most of them said 4. But those are the same people that talked about he had no protection. So if Pete Alonso can't protect anybody, which couldn't protect Nimmo, couldn't protect Lindor, couldn't protect Vientos, every time one of those 3 guys I just mentioned moved away from Pete Alonso protecting them, they were more successful. So Pete Alonso, we know, isn't good protecting other players. It might make him, whatever his statistics are, have a good season, but he doesn't do well protecting others. Fine, right? Lindor moves from in front of Alonso, goes to the leadoff spot away from Pete Alonso, has an MVP season. Mark Vientos bats second and is not in front of Pete Alonso, he bats better, or he even bats behind Pete Alonso. He's better. Nimmo, they tried him in 3 spot, was terrible. Moves him to 2 or 5 or 4 of 5, behind or away from Pete Alonso is better. Put Pete Alonso between Soto and Vientos. He has major protection in front of him with Soto and major protection with Vientos. Try that out. If Vientos, it should be really good. You're 1 through 5. Let's see if it works out. If it doesn't work out, you can start switching it around. But I think it's going to be very successful. Really successful. But we will see. And again, on spring training opening day, you'll see the lineup. Guarantee you're going to see Lindor, Soto, Alonso, 1, 2, 3. All right, so let's go to the next topic. Senga had another good bullpen session. Looks healthy. Feels healthy. Great sign. He hasn't pitched a game yet. Let's see how it goes. Let's see when he pitches and starts building up his arm strength, building up his innings, building up his pitch count. Hopefully he stays healthy. Again, I'm hoping for health. Let's start with health. Let's see if he can stay healthy. That's the important part. Everything else, I don't care. I don't care how he pitches in spring. Doesn't matter to me. Stay healthy. And then we can talk about later in spring his last 1 or 2 starts of spring training, how he's performing and how he looks. Is his pitches sharp? Is his fork pitch, his ghost fork pitch, nasty? Is his velocity where it needs to be? His last 2 starts is when I care. I don't care how he pitches. Remain healthy for the most part. And we're gonna finish up rather quickly, guys, because the Four Nations face-off with USA and Canada, the championship game is gonna start just now, and I want to watch that. Go USA, by the way, and screw Canada. Sorry if you're Canadian, I apologize, but go USA. Soto gifts a car to Brett Beatty, the Chevy Tahoe. And there were some people, which is hilarious, saying, with all that money Soto got, you got him a $90,000 car, a Chevy Tahoe. Why didn't you get him a Lambo? Why didn't you get him, a car that costs $150,000, $200,000? You know why? Because Brett Beatty's dream car was a Chevy Tahoe. That's the car he wanted. He was driving a 2016 Toyota. So Juan Soto found out, from sources his around people around Beatty, what was his dream car? What's the car he really wants? He wanted the Chevy Tahoe, so we got him a 2025 Chevy Tahoe, and good for him, right? And people are like, "Oh my God, he got a car that was less than $100,000." Like it's the sentimental part, right? If Brett Beatty says, "I want a 2025 Honda Accord," you're gonna get him that. Juan Soto did his work, did his homework, found out that Brett Beatty really loved the Chevy Tahoe. That's his dream car, and he got it for him. Awesome. It wasn't about the money and how much it was. It was what Brett Beatty wanted. It didn't take Lindor and McNeil a year and a half to get a car. Right? Yeah. But again, McNeil likes those 4x4 cars and those type of cars. So Lindor got the car that McNeil liked. Right? And the same thing with Juan Soto getting it for Brett Beatty. Brett Beatty dream car was a Chevy Tahoe, and that's what he got him, and that's awesome, right? He didn't go how expensive it was route, right? Because he could have got him a Lambo, but come on, like that's cool to drive every now and then, but to drive an everyday car when you're driving a 2016 Toyota in Brett Beatty's case, come on, that's awesome. I love the fact that Soto took the time to figure out what Brett Beatty wanted. What was his dream car? What did he really want? And for a guy who's 20, how old is Brett Beatty? 24, 25, 24 years old? The kid Beatty could have easily said, shoot, my dream car is a McLaren. Maybe Soto would have got it for him. Probably would have. But when Soto was like, he wants a Chevy Tahoe, no problem. I'm going to get him fully equipped, the best available. Get him the best Chevy Tahoe on the market. Probably got it custom made. Probably got some special rims and all that inside interior, all that fun stuff. Great job by Juan Soto. He didn't go, oh, let's give me the most expensive car just because he gave him the number. What did he want? What is sentimental to him? What was his car that he really wanted? That's what he did. That's awesome. That was an awesome gesture. You saw Juan Soto taking the time, go looking in the car, taking a look, just having a conversation. Juan Soto's a really good teammate, right? You see that already. He's getting along with all the guys. It seems like him and Siri, which is going to be important relationship-wise, they're getting along very well, but very cool what Juan Soto did with Brett Beatty. It wasn't about how much the car was. It was what Brett Beatty wanted, and he got exactly what he wanted. So cool thing with Juan Soto giving Brett Beatty a Chevy Tahoe, what Beatty wanted, which is cool. So, guys, with that said, another Mets spring training report stream in the books, guys. Can't wait until games start so we have more conversations of what's going on, looking at lineups, looking at young kids that might open up some eyes. We're going to have a lot of fun, guys. A couple of days from now, we're going to see a baseball game. Finally, spring training is about to start officially with games very, very soon. With that said, guys, thank you for tuning in to Mets Spring Training Report live right here on the channel. Hit that like button, guys. Subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed already. I'll see you next time, guys, on the show. Have a good night. Let's go, Mets. And let's go USA hockey, guys. Have a good night, guys. Let's go, Mets.
the dead of night, full of echo. Concrete jungle, dreams bust to grow. Mets